So I thought about this for some time. What is the difference between a child and an adult? I was thinking and I was like, well, a child can go to work just like an adult can go to work. A child can pay bills, you know what I'm saying? He can acquire some money or she can acquire some money and spend it on bills, you know what I'm saying? So their children and adults are the same there. I mean, even if I wanted to take it further, I could say, you know, a kid can pick up a belt, find somebody half his size, grab a hold of them, and just get in a rhythm. You know, it can spank somebody as well. So what is really that difference between a child and an adult other than age? And what I came to understand is it's the way they identify themselves. So if I'm a youngin', I'm identifying myself as, yo, I got all the time in the world, not a care in the world, and everything's funny. You know, everything is a joke because I'm a kid. But when I'm an adult, you know, it's like, okay, I'm responsible for things. I gotta be making sure I'm on alert about certain things. Like I can't be so lackadaisical. Things are serious. So because the child identifies themselves as such, therefore they're absent-minded, they're childish, they're giddish. But that adult, responsible, serious, focused. It made me think about the first time, you know, I identified myself as a child of God. I can only imagine myself being in the mirror, you know, like Slip, Jack. I had to feel like Mayweather, I would assume. Because at this moment, I am identifying myself with the Most High God. I am identifying myself with all the power there is. My perspective and actions changed. So I come to understand the only difference between a sinner and a saint is the way they identify themselves. Do you identify yourself with the world, or do you identify yourself with the kingdom? There's this identification that drives action and drives power. So we're going to talk about it. Yeah. We're going to talk about what Solomon was warning his son about. Like, it's in Proverbs 6 where he's talking about the seductive harlot and how she can reduce a man to the crust of bread. It gets deep. So the enemy is after the identity, and we're going to talk about how he gets there. So we're going to start with seduction. So seduction is the art of leading someone astray by the use of persuasion, temptation, and false promises. This is to result in the voluntary giving away of someone's authority over their own actions. And this follows by the inability to act according to one's better judgment. So I know there's a lot there. So we're going to break it down, and I'm gonna put it in analogy format just so we can make this art of seduction more easy to grab, more easy to get a hold of, because the enemy uses it often. So basically, let's say I'm a spouse, doing my morning walk. Yeah, minding my business, right? And then I see a prostitute. So at this moment, be it man or wife, you know, husband or wife, I am committed to my spouse. I am, you know, committed to the Lord, and I do not have any intentions of doing anything outside of those left and right limits. That being said, it is the duty, you know, the job of the prostitute to seduce this individual. That means to persuade and tempt and, you know, over time get this individual to give up the authority over their actions so that they can now not act according to their better judgment, but be easily manipulated by the prostitute. So here's some ways that we see it today. You know, you'll see a female You know what I'm saying? Prostitute, she'll have breasts out, you know what I'm saying? Cheeks hanging out. And it's just all these things. So you're captivated once you see it. And then after you see it, they start employing these things that we talked about. There'll be a little persuasion, you know, something like, hey, how you doing? You look real nice today. Dang, man, you fine, you know. You all these things that kind of get the male going, like, oh, yeah, you think I'm fine, huh? Yeah, you see them? That's no wave grease, girl. That's no wave grease. You know, he starts feeling himself. And then you roll into this temptation. It's like, I see you looking at my breasts, you know what I'm saying? These is real. I know a lot of these girls out here, that's fake, but you can touch these real. And now you're persuaded by, you're feeling good. And then it's like, oh, they real? Yeah. And it's like all these things are going on, like you're battling at this moment. You're like, yo, I know I shouldn't, man. Like that's my wife would not approve of this. So then she goes on to seal the deal with some false promises. This is all the art of seduction, that separation of the mind working with the body, you know, keeping that flesh in check. So what happens is she says, yo, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, ain't nobody got to know about what goes on right now. Like, so she puts you in this place where you feel safe, secure. This art of seduction is boom. It's in full-fledged motion, and this is what it's trying to get done. The moment we say, ain't nobody got to know. Like, yo, I got a career, man. I got a wife, I got kids. But you know what I'm saying? If this can stay here, I'll touch them. You know what I'm saying? I'll squeeze something. At that moment, it's a wrap. That is what the prostitute is intending to do. And we see this very clearly in Adam and Eve. So you see this in Genesis 3. And basically, the serpent comes up to Eve and he's like, yo, I hear you can eat all the fruit in this garden. Is that right? Is this true? She says, yeah, I can eat all of the fruit here, except for from the tree in the midst of the garden. And then you see the serpents look, but then you also see the mind chime in. The mind says, oh, and by the way, God said if I touch it or if I eat from it, I will die. So what you see right here is the body is doing this thing. It's like, yo, I can eat from this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Eating is a natural function. But you also see the mind who is submitted to God come in and say, oh, and just because I can eat of these things, the reason I don't eat from that tree is because of X, Y, and Z. So now the serpent sees a unified front. Once the serpent sees this unified front, it understands it needs to employ the art of seduction. I need to separate, this flesh from this mind, so I need to feed the flesh. So he goes off and he says, starting with false promises, you won't die. I promise. I got you. Trust me. Let me tell you a little secret. God just doesn't want you to be as wise and knowledgeable as him. In my opinion, he might be holding you back, but hey, that's your business. That's your business. So he's really playing on that curiosity of the flesh. He's really playing on that, hey, you can trust me kind of thing. And then Eve, she's listening and she's like, wow, so I'm not going to die. I mean, I do want to be kind of smart. I mean, I would, like to be a little smarter. She goes, she looks at the tree. She's like, oh, this thing is beautiful. Boom. Grabs from it, bites from it, and the rest is history. So now let's deal with reduction. To reduce is to diminish in size, strength, density, or value. So you're just trying to make something smaller than what it was, or smaller or less than what it used to be. See, this is the whole art of seduction, is to get you to this reduced state from something that once was mighty and principle-based, unwavering, to something that is small and a little more easy to manipulate. So let's take, for instance, a lion. So you have these zookeepers. They got a zoo. They go out to the safari, and they're like, yo, we need to beef up our main attraction. So they go out and they find some lions out, and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, this lion right here, this be awesome for the zoo. So they start by getting a little cub, because they know they can't just run up on a full-grown lion that's been out in the safari, you know what I'm saying? So it deals with a little cub. It kind of throws some meat out there, and then the cub is like, oh, look at that, I ain't got to go hunting today. It goes down in the it's like, this is good. However, the cub realizes that, yo, the pack is rolling, I got to roll. So it's moving. So this zookeeper is steadily trying to seduce first, so that it can get to this reduction state. So it continues to put out water and then entertainments. So all of these things is to kind of seduce this lion. So over time, the lion becomes more and more comfortable with eating, drinking, and playing with the entertainments left behind by these zookeepers, to the point that the pack is too far gone. And then the zookeepers pounce in on this dude. Once they pounce in, this is where reduction starts. So they take the little cub, takes him back to the zoo. Once they get him back to the zoo, he is put in a controlled climate, like it's heated, it's cooled, everything is done for him. He's put on a regular meal plan, he's got lean meat, a certain amount of fat so that he can look a certain way. And there's all these things that naturally would not be done for him, nor would he get so easy. He's got these plastic rocks to stand on, under his paws, so he's not getting them toughened up. So all of this stuff is happening to him, and he is reducing for his environment, which causes him to expand. The other lions around him who teach him how to be tough are no longer around him. This is the same thing that the seductive woman is trying to do, is separating you from your principles, from the things that the Lord is telling you, from the things that you know are true. It's getting you off, and then once it gets you in a place, it tends to reduce. So now this lion that is growing up, it's growing, and now it's full grown. This full grown lion feels things inside of it. It's like, I'm supposed to be roaring, but when it roars, it lets out like this little purr. And this purr is supposed to, shake trees. It's supposed to cause birds to fly. But he is not seeing it manifest. He's just seeing a whole bunch of tourists call him a little kitty kitty. Hey, kitty kitty. So now this lion is identifying himself as a little kitty kitty. And everything that this lion is supposed to be is kind of suppressed and almost forgotten about. For he has been seduced once in the safari, brought into a controlled habitat, domesticated. And now he is in a state of reduction. So what happens if you take this lion, all nice and reduced, and you go back to the safari, drop him out there? We've all seen Animal Planet. This lion is supposed to grab hold of a gazelle, and the rest is history. That's how it's supposed to go down. But what we would most likely see is a gazelle off in the, distance, eating, grazing, doing its thing. And the thoughts of our lion and the thoughts of our gazelle would go something like this. Like, the gazelle is like, I know I smell a lion. I should be taking off, but this lion don't quite smell right. So it turns around and it takes a little hesitant look to see if it looks like a lion. And it's like, it looks like a lion, but it doesn't quite look very mean and aggressive and strong. So the gazelle realizes that it's still hungry. So it continues to graze. That gazelle should have been beating feet, taking off. Some of us have some gazelles grazing that should have been bouncing. But I'm going to leave that where it's at. So basically, for our lion, it's looking at this gazelle like, yo, I sure is hungry. Maybe I should try eating some grass like this mighty, hooved beast of the fields is doing. So it's backwards, it's opposite. This lion that's supposed to be mighty, strong, and powerful is almost a little scared and almost a little terrified of what could go down. And then I flipped the script. What if it was a full-grown lion? I'm talking about a lion that's raised in the doggone Project Safari. And I'm talking about a gazelle that's just coming around, grazing. The mentality of this lion would be completely different. The mentality of this lion will be like, oh, I know this gazelle, smell me. Smell it, smell me. So this lion is like, it's got about 5 seconds to beat feet before it become lunch meat. This lion is just off principle, like the audacity of this lion to be, or this gazelle to be in my vicinity. So it takes off principle. Lion ain't even hungry, but it's chasing this gazelle off principle. And the whole time it's chasing it, this gazelle is running, and this lion is thinking, I am a paw-walking, mane-swinging, gazelle-eating king. And this gazelle is like, I need to beat feet. I need to make it out before this thing takes hold of me. But you see, it is completely different when you are in a reduced mind state. This is what that prostitute is trying to do. It's nothing worse than a man walk up on a married woman who he don't see the ring. Maybe he do. He think he gonna get, somewhere, but off principle, off of who she is, off of how she deals with her family and her husband, she shut that thing all the way down. Don't give him no room. He walk off feeling bad. Like, I should have never, like, I don't even want to talk to women no more because of how she shut him down. So the art of the seductive woman and man is to get that woman to get out of that mindset of, you have a husband, you have principles, you have children. Let me stray you away from that so I can reduce you and deal with you as if you are a domesticated kitty cat and not a full-grown married lion. So this seduction and reduction is something that you see Jesus being a little frustrated with the disciples on. So I can only imagine Jesus is in the stern of the ship. He probably been fasting. You know Jesus. He probably been teaching and preaching from a mountaintop. So he yelling. You know Jesus. You know the stories. Performing miracles. He's tired. So he's like, you know what? We on our way to another city. I need to get some sleep. And the disciples are down, beating on the door. Jesus! Jesus! Aren't you worried that we could drown and die? Jesus wakes up. And instantly, he must be thinking, these guys have been with me. They've seen me heal the sick, turn the waters into wines. They've seen me do so much. There is nothing outside that could be that bad. Jesus climbs out of the stern. He comes out. And this has to be his face. A storm. Y'all come wake me up from the only bit of sleep I get. Because you worried about a storm? Because of his identification with himself. Because of his lionship, if you will. Because of who he knows he is, and because of who he knows and what he knows winds and seas are in comparison to him. He simply says, peace, be still. And off rip it says, the winds obeyed. And what makes me feel like Jesus had this demeanor and this character about himself when he was talking to the disciples or looking at them was because of what he says. He's like, why so fearful? You're lions, you know what I'm saying? If a lion in the safari saw this little cub, full-grown lion, domesticated, it would look at it like, don't you see that gazelle? Like, why aren't you chasing that thing down? You're making us look bad, bruh. What's up? Storm came in and preyed on their flesh, their self-preservation. See, the spirit cannot be drowned by a little bit of water. The spirit does not get upset by what it sees going on because it knows what it is capable of. But the flesh in which the storm seduced and preyed on, just like the serpent preys on the flesh of Eve, just like the seductive prostitute preys on the flesh of the man, the storm preyed on the flesh of the disciples. Jesus goes on to say, how? How can you still have no faith? So now we're about to get into this self-identification. See, this self is serious when it comes to seduction, reduction, and self. That sign popped up out of nowhere. I take that as the Lord shining down. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into self. Now, when you are self-aware, I want to use a car for an example. Let's say your car. A self-aware car knows that it is 3,500 pounds of aerodynamic material in the parked position. In this position, it can only be moved by the operator. Now, if anybody has ever tried to push back on a car, you know what I'm saying, trying to get it to move forward while it's parked, that joint is stuck. That's what it's like when the self is parked. When the self knows what it is and is only moving for the operator. Yeah, some of y'all know who the operator is, right? Now, imagine that car going in neutral because we're, human beings, so we can go in and go out. Now, if you get in your flesh, imagine yourself being in neutral. Now, this car can be pushed, but it's not going nowhere fast, and it's going to take a lot to push it. But just as soon as you get out of your flesh, back into your spirit, well, then you are solid. This is the same thing that the serpent sees as he is talking to the unified Eve. So the art of seduction, in which Solomon is speaking about being reduced to that of the crust of bread, is that once you convince this car that it is not 3,500 pounds, once you convince this car to come out of park and do all these other things, that is when the car becomes nothing more than a remote control toy. This is the art of the prostitute. The art of the adulteress is to take this one thing that self-identifies itself, that knows what it is and stands firm, heavy, unmovable, and break it down into something that can be puppeteered and played with. That is what the serpent does to Eve, one that is walking side by side with God, communing with God in the garden. He knows who she is, but must break her down so that she can be manipulated. So what you see when this is broken down is that anybody can grab the controller, the remote control, and be like, yeah, do exactly what I say, because you're nothing in this state of reduction but a piece of plastic. Pass it off to the homies. Pass it off to the homegirls. Nothing. You're nothing but something to be easily manipulated. This is what the enemy is after. That breaking down and that reduction. But what you see in Jesus is very different. Jesus knows that he is the Son of the Most High God. Jesus knows that all power that is in him, he receives from the Father. Jesus knows that all the power in the universe comes from the Father and says, peace, be still. He is not seduced by perception. He is not reduced by the screams and the cries of his disciples. He knows who and what he is. This is the state of self-realization that every believer, Christian, must get to. It is this state where you receive. I can only imagine a unseduced, unreduced, fully fledged, committed, and aligned child of God. This individual cannot be touched. It cannot be moved. It cannot be manipulated. It is firm in who and what it is and will move only for a licensed operator. This licensed operator is the will of God. You are stuck, sturdy, and unmovable. That is what one should be. And the beauty of it all is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. When you see Jesus as a young boy, he was mostly nothing more than the son of David, a carpenter. But as he matures and as he aligns himself with God and identifies himself more and more with God, this same 3,500-pound car that they used to see as baby Jesus, son of David, ends up performing miracles. He ends up doing great things. He ends up healing the sick, but he still looks the same. What I'm trying to say is that you can be 3,500 pounds but hit like a 40-ton semi-truck when you are aligned with God. When you are in unison with your self-realization, when you know exactly who you are and you do not separate yourself from that which you are. That was a self-realization that I had to take on and see and say, I am one with you. I am submitted to you. My body is submitted to my mind. My mind is submitted to my soul, and my soul is submitted to the guidance of God. And we are all on one accord. It is at this state of consecration that you cannot be moved. It is at this state of consecration the prostitute comes up and says, hey, baby, you looking for a good time? And you say, excuse me. Do you not know who you are talking to? This may sound arrogant at first, but when you really think about it, you are saying, excuse me, miss, but I, Bobby Jackson, am checked out. I am fully submitted, and it is not my will, but thy will. So, you're talking to the same power that raised the dead. You are talking to the same power that created the heavens and the earth. You are talking to the same power that can do all things. So I would please suggest you recognize who and what you're talking to. Because this flesh that if you were talking to would bend, but this spirit that you might be talking to might end up changing your life. So if you're trying to keep living this life, you might want to recognize. Because I'm checked out, submitted to the will of the Father. And you are unmovable. You may touch people. You may change the hearts of prostitutes when they come in contact with you. You are not seduced. You may change the direction of that storm when it comes up against you. You are not seduced. But you know exactly who and what you are. This is the great principle in which Solomon is trying to explain to his son. Do not be seduced by the devices of the harlot. Do not long for her in your heart. Do not be allured by her with the batting of the eyes, but know who you are. For if you fall to her devices, to her tricks, to her ways, she will seduce you, reduce you, and prey on your precious life. We know what the enemy is after now. He's after that identity. We identify ourselves with the Most High God and operate accordingly. Yo, so usually I vibe out with like a testimony or something, or something that I went through personally. However, it's gonna be a little bit different this time. I was doing this study and I was getting ready for the message, and the Lord spoke very clearly to me. And usually I don't go off my notes. However, I don't have very much practice with this, and I didn't want to misconstrue what I heard, so I wrote it down verbatim. And he asked me, well, more so I asked him if it was for me to share. And I felt it in my spirit that it was to share. And it was almost like he wanted me to tell it to his people. So I wrote it down verbatim, and I'm going to just, read off what the Lord gave to me. May it bless you guys. So it starts off, you cannot know me until you know yourself. For you are an extension of me. My people are looking for me in all the wrong places. And these false imitations of me are seducing them. The power I have cannot be sustained by the flesh, but can only be sustained by the Spirit. When you are seduced, you are in your flesh. The things you have prayed for while in the Spirit I cannot give you, because you spend majority of your time in your flesh. Thus, if I grant your petition, my glory shall surely overtake and destroy you. If I am to move, you must know yourself. Stand true to who and what I called you to be. So that spoke volumes to me. And I know there's a lot of times that we can be going through something and praying for big things and wondering why they're not showing up. And I believe that in order for us to handle certain things, we have to see ourselves a certain way. You cannot put the responsibilities of an adult on a child who sees him or herself as a child. Nor can you put the responsibilities of an adult on an adult who sees themselves as children. For they will not take it seriously enough, or they will not understand the magnitude in which they are operating. Thus, they could find themselves self-destructive or outright destructive. And I trust the wisdom of the Father, and therefore I am seeking within. I'm looking for that which I am inside of myself, knowing that all the power that I need and all that the Lord is trying to do in my life, He has made provisions for it. I just need to align myself with it and recognize who I am. And on that note, bless and be not seduced.